if you do a git clone of this repo. So we assume you've done the git clone, right?
So depending on how fast we get through things, we're going to walk through a total, hopefully, of 6 exercises. They get progressively more complex, and for the most part, exercises 2 through 6, actually you'll take the code that you wrote for the previous exercise and modify it in some way to complete the current one. So the first 2 are really sort of introductory. As Alberto mentioned in his talk, we have these sort of 2 main ways of using BGPstream. One is this BGP reader, the command line tool, and this is great for just being able to get familiar with BGP data, play around, see what's there, understand what it looks like, and if you're looking for some new event from the command line, you don't have to write any code, especially if you like other sort of Unix, the Unix pipeline of tools and cutting and sorting and blah blah blah. So let's start with that exercise. So you guys should have, if you're to be trusted in saying that you have BGPstream running, you now should be able to run the BGP reader tool. If you run it without arguments, it's going to print out the usage information. So does anybody have any problem with that? Okay, all right. So the idea of this exercise, the first part of it is really pretty simple. It's just the idea here is get familiar with just the arguments that you can give to BGP reader. So go ahead and find, once you have BGP reader, find a prefix. If you don't have, your favorite prefix that you like to look at, you can use, as Alberto mentioned, there's, Hurricane Electric has this interface, yes, and you can search things. So we're based at the San Diego Supercomputer Center.
BGP.he.net.
Yeah, and it should be linked in the exercise as well. Apparently my browser is not valid. And so once you make a query here, if your browser is more trusted than mine, then you should be able to take that prefix, take the prefixes that you find, and then use BGP reader, ask it, so configure BGP reader to get rib dumps, specify a time window, and then specify that prefix, a prefix, any prefix that you want. And then when you run it, it will output the entries in that rib dump that match your prefix. And so you'll be able to see the AS paths that the peers of the collector that you're specifying, which is the route view Singapore collector. And that's so. The reason that I'm suggesting to use route view Singapore in this case is that it's a collector that has a handful of peers, but it only has a couple of full feed peers. And so in this case, where you are running probably on your laptop, you have limited resources, and we have limited time in the class as a collector, that you're going to be able to process that RIB data reasonably quickly. Otherwise, this can take some time. So go back. So you're going to want to configure BGP reader to select RIB data from the route view Singapore collector, and then to some prefix that you've found somewhere. And then finally, the last part of configuration that you're going to need to do, if you don't do this, I think you'll get an error message. You want it to select a time window. So something that's maybe a little bit interesting and not necessarily intuitive here is that RIB dumps, although they're conceptually an atomic operation, the collector dumps its RIB, right? And it's RIB, right? It's not over time. In practice, RIB dumps aren't made atomically. So there are the multiple records that you get for a RIB dump as the collector goes through its prefixes and dumps them out will each have a slightly different timestamp. They'll typically cover a few seconds. So what you're going to want to do is specify a time window here of a few minutes long. It's pretty safe to specify about an hour. So if you start from midnight, so there's going to be a RIB dump at midnight. If you specify midnight to 1 a.m. Or midnight to 5 after midnight, you should get a full rib dump in there. Has anybody been able to make this work?
They also want to create groups, so you don't have to do it on your own.
Is the command line way to do this, or you want to?
BGP reader.
Oh, okay. I was trying it with the 5.1.
We'll get there.
So what's the?
Yeah, but they can be the collector.
So this has period.
Oh, that's a different feature. If you specify a long window, that will limit the number of ribs to one every that long. So you know how that works.
Minus K for
But in this case, you just specify a rib, because otherwise you just see it's closed. So you can specify timestamp. Yeah, so do midnight and then end time, 5 minutes. No, so like find, yeah, so that's a good point. If you're not somebody, and thank your lucky stars, that you're dealing with Unix epoch times a lot.
Yes, I was going to say.
Yeah, so there's,
Oh, yeah.
if you Google Unix epoch time converter, you're gonna find epochconverter.com. It's really helpful. I use this on a daily basis. Put in a real time, and it'll convert it to a timestamp for you. So, as I was saying, pick a midnight. So let's say 0. So this timestamp will be the first part of your window, and then you can specify, 1 a.m. and get the other end of your window.
Make sure I'm not seeing the date trick. Even if it's different, I think date. The command line, the Unix date command, but I think the syntax is different depending on.
I don't know what
Unix.
the Linux
Yeah.
version is. I only know PhD.
Yeah, I think they have different flags. So,
And the Linux one's significantly more
so
complicated.
it's fine. It's okay. I think this is the perfect one.
Yeah.
How's it going, guys? Good. You are professional.
Did you have any?
So it's printing, but are we supposed to see that? Or?
Did you ask for? Is this graphics economics?
Yeah.
Oh, these are small. It's still. Well, these are right. This is the start. But you're going to want to specify a single. But also before you run, you specify a single. This one, I would switch. So if you specify just the values, so again, minus C. So in this case, when you're dealing with downloadable pages, that's going to take a while to get through that. It shouldn't be so see there, it's started processing the red. It's going to output as
Output the entry.
yeah. So you should see a handful from the different queues of the route you see. Yeah.
Now minus hours.
So actually the version that we have in this here, that'll be version 2. From the master of GitHub, as opposed to
Today
we have a version.
Yeah, I created.
Oh, you created it. Yeah.
put it on there like
Yeah, so there's that's how far back you can.
Oh yeah, so you have to be. So you can say 6 hours in a day.
It'll do from 6 hours ago. But yeah, we really want to make it.
I'm always, whenever I use this tool, I'm like, okay, okay, timestamp it there. So let's take it. Just what now and then stream it.
Yep, absolutely.
If I get it on the laptop, it's done. So what do you want me to do? Because I didn't know, but in the end I made the mistake. Exactly. I think I have it here somewhere.
And on the ring cheese as well. Yes.
We should do this stream. Run is called HTTP. Yes. Oh, okay. Because the US get broker because all the ports are blocked. Yeah.
It's over HTTP. But you have no problem.
No, I'm running here. I'm kind of firewall. I set the proxy. There's no problem here. I'm running the servers. Nothing so far, but it still works. But maybe under proxy, it's not more than 5.
It's just doing regular HTTP. The reason this is going to take some time to run is because you've asked for all of the ring selectors. It will first, in order to give you your data, it's going to have to process all of the ring dumps from those connectors.
Okay.
That's going to take some time. That's why
I put it up C and CCU0.
C, and then, yeah, if you pick one of the specific
Okay.
selectors.
Because there.
Yeah, so this part here. So if you specify just that collector, it'll run much quicker.
Okay.
Is that finished for you? Yeah.
So here it's
Oh yeah, it started.
it's unexpected end of firewall. Okay. Well, okay. Interesting. I could have wrote minus B.
Minus C.
Because
C
it's a
is the
collector.
project and
Yeah,
C is the
collector. So route views dot C. Okay. Here it's working.
Yeah, so that's the start. So it's gonna, and then it'll have to process
The whole. Yeah. Okay.
So you're, you know, in this case, you know, that collector has each rib dump has 60,000 rows. That's for one here. And routes has 100.
Maybe. Yeah. It's a lot. Yeah, it's not a good idea. Yeah.
Especially if you
Yeah. No, it's in the server, but it's not a problem. It's normal.
I think you want to show use this
So if anybody's still struggling to deal with the command line options here, this should be the solution to this. If you want to. So we run the BGP reader tool, specify a time window that covers a rib dump. We ask for just rib records from this single collector. So I've seen a couple of people that has either not specified a collector or specified a project. And so if you don't specify a collector, you're going to end up pulling all of the rib dumps for all of the collectors, and that, while it will work, will take a long time to process those. And then finally, specify a prefix that you're interested in filtering for.
Just appears.
peer IP.
There is, yeah. But you have to, unfortunately, know which collector it was to use.
Okay. That's still fair. I mean, you can just bring the one package.
Yes, yeah. So we would like to at some point have that kind of metadata available to know which of those is. And also, we've had a suggestion from somebody at the ITF that suggested having a little bit more sort of juicy information about the peers. You know, like. So rather than coming in from a collection point of view, come at it from a data point of view. Like, if I'm wanting to find information about this SAS, what peer should I look at?
Yeah.
Right, so, and give sort of more useful functions. So hopefully something.
You know, it makes sense of looking at it. Somebody just asked for
Oh, I mean the peer IPs you would get from the data.
no, IPAS, geolocation.
Sure, yeah. But I was meaning more sort of like semantically meaningful data that you can sort of infer from peers' names, for example. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and there's
It's really weird. And I've also tried a bunch of questions. I know that making some written and it was the instant all the space. So that thing just takes whatever.
one more. But that's one of the basically better.
I have to say that your university finally
If you want some help in interpreting the output of BGP reader, my suggestion is going on bgpstream.kada.org and then you click on documentation, then you click on tools, and then you select BGP reader, and there is an entire help page on BGP reader. You can use it as a reference for the command line, but you can use it also to. There is documentation about the output format, so it will explain in the line each record what it means. Because, for example, one of your colleagues used a different collector. It took time to download the data, but for a while only one line in the output that started with a B, and it didn't have a trap, and he was wondering if there was a problem. Then if you check the documentation, you figure out what's going on. You get more familiar with it.
That usage documentation is linked from this README here that you're using for this exercise as well.
So, is there a link to this on the TMA PhD School website? I think we should have written a link, a short URL or something, because some of them What's the next one on BGP?
Let's say that.
So it's this. I think it's better
Yeah. So, okay, assuming that the first round is done, okay, then there's a second one that needs to look at updates, but I don't have any updates. So why don't you do the exit and
Well, so you don't have any updates here. Oh, hang on. Yeah, you only asked for this.
when I did not ask for this.
Sorry, but for switching to business as a call.
So
Tell them.
probably what you're asking is that the information is going to look at in the
Folks, based on your results, on one hand I would suggest you to make groups because it's a bit easier if you help each other.
Yeah, and I remember.
Also let us know if you have problems. And I would suggest to switch to exercise 2, right?
Yeah. So at this point, we'll switch away from the command line tool to the Python API. So the first thing, I mean, this was supposed to be a prerequisite, but let's just make sure if you can even just open a Python shell, so run Python from your command line, and then try importing BGPstream, PyBGPstream. I'll show you just to make sure that it's going to be it's running. So if you and then import _ PyBGPstream. If that returns you an error, then you're not going to be able to make it any further, and we have to fix that.
Yeah. So please try it now and let us know. Guys, please try running Python and the import command.
Have a show of hands, anybody's made it work so far? Okay, all right, I'm gonna call it a quorum, and if you have problems, yell out and somebody will come and help you out. Okay, so for the Python exercise, this is exercise 2, so again, you can just go to that README in that repository that you've cloned, and have this. You can have this on your laptop so you can read it more carefully. The idea here is that you'll take a piece of boilerplate Python code that is available on the BGPstream website here. So there is some code that's available on the BGPstream website in the documentation. It's boilerplate code for using the Python bindings. So first of all, go here. I'll show you. So the tutorial. Walks you through step by step what's going to happen, what you need to do to make BGPstream work from Python. And then there's this complete example here. So take this, and then you're going to modify it to do what you need in this exercise.
Yeah,
Yeah. 1 second.
I think you want to show again the Python command
Oh, sure.
for those who were not following. So
Underscore.
so you want to try this? So everybody's okay with Python? All right, thank you, Alistair.
So starting from the example code in the PyBGPstream tutorial, then make sure you reconfigure the filters. So you're going to find, just like you were using these configurations on the command line, there are, as Alberto pointed out in his talk, there are similar kinds of configurations that you do in Python, just the API looks a little different. So if I go to the example code that you're going to be basing this on, you have these parts where you're adding filters. So this is adding a filter for collector RRC11. and then an interval filter. So this is the same as that -W option that you had. So you're going to be modifying these.
Can you increase the font size?
Sure.
Even more.
And then once you've modified those, so you're going to modify them to have only update data, and then remove the collector specification. So and what that's meaning is give me the update data for all of the collectors. And then pick a 1 minute time window. So again, go to that tool, pick a 1 minute time range, and then modify your filters to do that. And then modify the code inside that inner while loop. So you have this outer while loop that's going to iterate across records. You can leave all of this, and then you have this inner while loop that iterates across elements. So you're just going to modify this part of the code. And the goal here is to build a per peer ranking, so a per vantage point ranking of the number of update messages, so the number of alums that you see for each peer. So what you're going to have to do there is look at the alum, figure out what peer it came from, and then update some kind of data structure as you process alums to count the number of alums that you see for each peer. So the API for the alum data structure is also on the BGPstream website, and it's linked from that page. It's at the bottom of this PyBGPstream API, so we have the BGP alum. So you're going to be looking for the address of the peer, the IP address of the peer. So this is the router that the collector is peering with. Find that IP address, and then have some kind of dictionary where you store the IP address as the key, and then count the number of alums that you see for each of those. And then once you're done with once you're done inside of that while loop, I'll walk through the dictionary and print out some statistics about how many updates you saw for each peer.
Do you have to do a route? Because in this case you have to do a route.
Yeah, record updates.
Also, then how do you specify from which collector?
Oh, the same as what was in there before. It's just that you're wanting to get data from all of the collectors.
Okay, no, but if you have to do updates from just one.
Yeah, that's what was already there. You just want the example that you had was okay. So this was the collector.
Oh, so by default it gives you updates.
This would have given you grids and updates without this update. If you had this configuration.
And if you don't just want the
Then you say record type, and you added a second filter.
I see. Okay, that's good.
And what I'm saying is for this exercise, you can do
Sorry? I mean, he's the expert.
So he's an expert.
No, just some reading. Yeah, but when you cut it, you wanna put something.
I'm asking if you want this code.
This one? This point is big. So, just say, you wanna help? You know what you're doing? Yeah, so there wasn't one. There was 3 or 4. And then I want to say on filter config lines. Yes. for them, just put it online and detail, right? So that you give them some more time to figure out how it works. So they don't catch it. In our dreams, everybody catches it. At least we will just every exercise of that.
So for anybody that's still having a bit of a hard time with this exercise, we just put a partial solution in that Git repo. So if you do a Git pull on that repo, this is most of the code that you need to do this. You will still need to add the BGPstream configuration part here so that you can learn how the API works and configure it to as the README says. But other than that, everything else here will do the work of processing the elements and updating some state and outputting the state at the end. So again, there's a partial solution in the Git repo. I just added it so you can use that as a base to modify.
No, quelli là bonus, sempre la bonus perché se non c'è quello donato non è obbligatorio di 10
Ho detto fatto che molti non ritornano giusto di l'occasione di confrontarsi
Who does think is done with exercise 2? Oh wow. Okay. Who wants help with exercise 2? What? Sorry,
If you're done with exercise 2 and you're feeling adventurous, just go to exercise 3 and read the instructions. The instructions should be all you need at this point to keep going through. So we'll kind of slowly move through the exercises up that we're projecting up here, but please do feel free to just keep working as you can. And so ask us as soon as you have any problems. Because a lot of things that we're seeing are stuff that probably would take you quite a while to figure out, but if you just grab one of us, we can probably help you fix it pretty quickly.
So I would say another 2 minutes and then we switch to exercise 3.
Yep.
check the exercises in Vintac.
Sure.
Who's done with exercise 7? Nobody? Yeah. So Alistair, I'm hearing that somebody is done with 3.
What comes after 3?
Yeah, you can go on from
Yes.
it's only when they're 20,000 hours. That's so true.
Yeah, I cut it out. I make it faster.
How much do we other time you cut the time? I have the number of elements to do it.
Yeah.
So you just take the first 20,000. Or 200 each.
Okay, so for those of you who want to move on to exercise 3, who aren't already on 7 or whatever, I've also added some extra information in the README for exercise 3 that gives a little more hints about how to do this. So for exercise 3, it's going to be a very similar script to what you had for exercise 2. The idea here is that you're going to count the number of prefixes that each peer announces, and then plot a CDF of those prefix counts. And so what we're hoping to see here is a CDF that, if you can recall, however long ago it was, hours ago, that Alberto mentioned the difference between partial and full feed peers. For a given collector, some peers may only share a subset of the overall routing table. And so in this case, if you plot the CDF, you'll be able to see a knee in the graph where you have the full feed peers and the partial peers. So as I said, it's going to be a very similar configuration. You're going to switch to ribs instead of updates, and make sure you switch the time interval there. And then I've also added, in case you want it, some sample code that will use matplotlib to plot a CDF of these. So take a look at exercise 3's README, and then the instructions for doing the plotting are at the bottom if you need them. Oh yeah, that's right. So I also put a link here in case you didn't get exercise 2 all the way working. You can start from this example. This script link here will take you to a solution for exercise 2 that you can then modify for exercise 3.
There are questions. You want to ask loud or you just need help? Oh.
Just go for exercise 6. Work for us. So I don't know. So it's just Alberto said exercise 6 might be nice to. I just read it. Okay, so yeah, that's what I meant. Yeah. So I just sent you emails because I get anxious around it. Yeah, I don't want to finish my slides, that's the other thing. So, I don't know. So maybe, well, there's the instigator of just send both of you some code for right on us. Actually, it's less than 5 minutes.
So we can stitch it together.
Yeah, I mean,
If you want more, you can show.
yeah,
Leave the blank on it, tiny parts.
yes, it's like an API key and in IP address. That's all you know. That's all we need. But it's this much code, which I hate. It's a lot. I can do a trace route. You don't care about it.
It's good if they have your code, they know the next time they need to do trace route, they copy and paste it. It's a contribution.
Yeah.
No, because I
I've been thinking of actually having some classes, like I could see Rabbit as a remotely distributed trace web online. So you just have like an interface or AS, which is the extra one doing measurements from. They have all like the geographic distribution of it. Give me that node, you click on the node, trace route. What destination go to, enter, and you just can trace those back. That's what central operators think, and they don't want to deal with API. I don't want to deal with APIs.
Yeah, for an operator it's different.
Sorry?
An operator's perspective is different.
But even for research, I mean, yes, you have to do this because you want to like go beyond the normal thing. Because if you're investigating or whatever, you don't want to at that point.
Or if you're investigating money,
Definitely you don't want to.
indeed, you just take BGP or whatever.
Yeah.
If you want to study about inflation, it's the
Yeah,
API,
then
it's
this stuff is
depends. I think it would be nice if we get together to create
your BGP
is one agent
measurements.
we create like a series tutorial.
We have trainers in the advocacy as well. And they're really good at it. So they're detect what
If I didn't,
also I was anglicizing the Dutch word, so I'm hoping I create for your hackathon. Can you do it in English?
wow.
I don't think trouble.
Well, California is a heavily island trampoline. It's like going to Vatican City, Italy. They wanted to do the connection,
Trump actually supported it.
Yeah, because indeed it's the same concept. Instead of just forget about it, let's play I always on Facebook when I follow a couple of months after Trump's presidency, I actually because I was every morning checking out my university, getting so angry that it affected my and then one day I was talking about this thing with a friend, and I said, you know what, when I raise it, I use Facebook, I live on one, so I stay in touch with friends. Just been working from home. I can't do the laptop, so if I'm working sometimes, but in the morning to reviews or in the evening before I go to my house, I don't know. My mood just boost. Good? Yes. Good. Adesso visto? Could be.
I couldn't tell you from Ralph Hughes. I couldn't tell you from Riz.
Ce li veniva da ridere perché di sempre facile gran parte era
In a Ralph Hughes project, you can do somewhere, I guess, like a BGP summary, like how many routes they got from years. Or is it 90%? 90%?
Oh, the vast majority. Actually, this is 100,000
io penso che sia veramente non è materiale che avete utilizzato per parte guarda se mi sono chittato very well prepared. They thought this was done. It's been used for the end sign many times. We found it in the drawer. Change one okay, so we need to wait where you are getting 60 seconds. Yeah, maybe.
Can you hear me to the next?
Right. So it seems we need to close.
I know you wanted to keep writing
Exactly.
BGPstream code all night.
Any high-level feedback you want to give us now?
Support Python 3.
Support what?
Python 3.
Want me to make your placard so you can go out and protest?
Well, that's
It's supported. It is already.
It is.
Yeah.
I was able to compile it from Python.
You use the version in master rather than the one from the website.
Okay. Anything else? So the exercises are online anyway, so you, for who didn't finish exercise 7,
you continue it online, please send us emails with feedback if you have any. Okay, we are happy to hear about ideas or problems that you had or things you want to do, and if you want to work on something or you're thinking about the feature, or you have a research task and you want an advice, or you have already pre-written scripts using BGP dump or other stuff, and you want to get an idea of how you can improve them using BGPstream, right? I think that's all for now. Thank you. Thank you.